She thought it was just another quiet afternoon at the cafe, until a little girl with tear-streaked cheeks ran straight into her arms, calling her Mommy. The child's father? The most dangerous man in the city. And the truth behind those desperate eyes would shatter everything she thought she knew about her past. If you're listening to this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. The rain had started early that Thursday afternoon in Portland, Oregon, drumming a steady rhythm against the tall windows of Bella's Cafe on Northwest 23rd Avenue. Nora sat alone at her usual corner table, the one with the chipped edge and the view of the wet street outside, where pedestrians hurried past under black umbrellas. Steam rose from her chamomile tea, curling into the gray light that filtered through the glass. She wrapped both hands around the ceramic cup, feeling its warmth seep into her palms. This was her ritual. Every Thursday at 3 o'clock, she came here to sit with her thoughts and a book she never quite finished. Today, it was a worn paperback with a cracked spine, something about a woman who disappeared and came back different. Nora couldn't remember the title. She couldn't remember a lot of things from before the accident 3 years ago, the one that had left her with a scar along her left temple, and a past that existed only in fragments and other people's stories. The cafe smelled like roasted coffee beans and cinnamon, familiar and safe. A young couple laughed at the counter. An old man read his newspaper by the door. Nora took a sip of her tea and watched the rain streak down the window, each drop racing the others to the bottom. She had built a quiet life here in Portland after waking up in that hospital bed, with no memory of who she was or where she came from. The doctors called it retrograde amnesia, severe trauma to the head. They said her memories might return, or they might not. 3 years later, she had stopped waiting. She worked at a bookstore on Burnside Street, lived in a small studio apartment with a fire escape that overlooked a community garden, and kept to herself. No close friends. No family that she knew of. Just this carefully constructed existence that felt both real and impossibly fragile, like a house built on sand. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Nora glanced up out of habit, then returned to her tea. She didn't notice the black SUV that had pulled up outside, or the way the driver stayed behind the wheel with the engine running. She didn't see the tall man in the dark coat who stepped into the cafe, water dripping from his shoulders, his eyes scanning the room with the practiced efficiency of someone who assessed threats before he assessed anything else. His name was Zachary Kane, though most people in Portland's underground called him something else entirely. He was 38 years old, broad-shouldered and sharp-featured, with dark hair that he kept short and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. He wore his authority like a second skin, in the way he moved, the way he stood, the way other men stepped aside when he entered a room. His suit was expensive but understated, charcoal gray with a black shirt beneath, no tie. On his left hand, he wore a single gold ring that had belonged to his father. Zachary Kane controlled most of the city's underworld operations, the docks, the gambling houses, the protection rackets that kept certain businesses safe and others in line. He had inherited the empire from his father and expanded it with ruthless intelligence and an iron will. People feared him, people respected him, and people knew better than to cross him. But today, he wasn't thinking about business. Today, he was thinking about the small hand clutching his own, and the little girl who walked beside him with her pink raincoat and her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. "Daddy, can I have hot chocolate?" The voice was small and sweet, belonging to a 4-year-old with dark curls and her father's gray eyes. Her name was Lily, and she was the only thing in Zachary Kane's world that he loved more than power. "Sure, sweetheart." His voice, when he spoke to her, lost its edge. He led her to the counter, one hand resting protectively on her small shoulder. He ordered her hot chocolate and a black coffee for himself, then turned to find a table. That's when Lily saw her. The little girl froze, her eyes going wide. Her stuffed rabbit fell to the floor, and then she was running, her pink raincoat flapping behind her, her small feet pounding across the cafe floor. "Mommy!" The word cut through the quiet hum of conversation like a knife. Nora looked up from her tea, confused, just in time to see the child barreling toward her. Before she could react, small arms wrapped around her waist and a tear-streaked face pressed against her sweater. "Mommy! Mommy, I missed you!" The little girl was sobbing now, clinging to Nora with desperate strength. "Where did you go? Why did you leave me?" Nora's heart hammered in her chest. She looked down at the child, at the dark curls and the gray eyes swimming with tears, and felt something shift inside her. something deep and primal and terrifying. Her hands hovered over the girl's back, uncertain, trembling. I think you have the wrong person, Nora said softly, but her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. I'm not Lily. The voice was low and commanding, and Nora looked up to see the man in the dark coat standing 3 feet away. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those gray eyes, the same shade as the child's, were fixed on Nora with an intensity that made her breath catch. Zachary Kane stared at the woman his daughter was clinging to, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. It couldn't be. It wasn't possible. But there she was, sitting in a cafe in Portland, alive and breathing and looking at him like he was a stranger. Elena, his wife, the woman who had disappeared 3 years ago after the ambush on Highway 26. The woman he had searched for, mourned for, buried an empty casket for. The woman he had loved with a ferocity that had nearly destroyed him when she was gone. She was thinner now, her dark blonde hair longer, falling past her shoulders in soft waves. She wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, no jewelry except for a small silver watch on her wrist, but it was her face. Those green eyes, that delicate bone structure, the small scar above her left eyebrow that she'd gotten falling off a bike when she was 7. That confirmed what his mind refused to accept. Elena. He said her name like a prayer, like a curse, like the answer to a question he'd stopped asking. Nora shook her head, her hands still hovering over the crying child. I'm sorry, but my name is Nora. Nora Bennett. I don't know who Elena is. Zachary took a step closer, and Nora saw something flicker in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or disbelief, or something darker that she couldn't name. The cafe had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. Lily, come here. His voice was gentle but firm. The little girl shook her head, burying her face deeper into Nora's sweater. No, it's Mommy. I know it's Mommy. Nora's hands finally settled on the child's back, an instinctive gesture of comfort. The moment she touched her, something sparked in her mind, a flash of memory, quick and bright, and gone before she could grasp it. A nursery with yellow walls, the sound of a lullaby, small fingers wrapped around her thumb. She gasped, pulling back slightly, and Lily looked up at her with those heartbreaking gray eyes. Don't you remember me? The little girl whispered. Nora opened her mouth to answer, but no words came, because somewhere deep inside, in a place she couldn't reach or name, something was stirring, something that felt like recognition, like coming home. Zachary crouched down beside his daughter, his movements careful and controlled. Lily, this lady isn't Mommy. Mommy is... He stopped, the lie catching in his throat. Because how could he tell his daughter that her mother was dead when she was sitting right here, warm and alive, and looking at him with a stranger's confusion? I'm sorry, Nora said again, and this time her voice was steadier. I was in an accident 3 years ago. I don't remember anything from before. I don't know you. I don't know her. I'm sorry. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. 3 years ago, the same time Elena had vanished. Zachary's mind was racing, putting pieces together, calculating probabilities, assessing the situation with the cold logic that had kept him alive in a world where trust was a liability. But beneath that logic, something else was rising, a wild, desperate hope that he had thought was long dead. The rain outside intensified, hammering against the windows. Inside the cafe, time seemed to have stopped. Nora looked from the man to the child and back again, seeing the resemblance, seeing the pain in both their faces, and feeling the weight of something she couldn't understand pressing down on her chest. Please, Zachary said, and the word sounded foreign in his mouth. He wasn't a man who begged, but for this, for the possibility that his wife had survived, that she was here, that his daughter might have her mother back, he would do anything. Just let me explain. Let me show you something. And if you still don't remember, if you still want to walk away, I'll never bother you again. Nora should have said no. Every instinct told her to stand up, to leave, to run from this man and this child, and the impossible claim they were making. But she looked down at Lily, at those tear-filled eyes, and felt that strange stirring again, that sense of something just beyond her reach, like a word on the tip of her tongue. Okay, she heard herself say. Show me. And with that single word, Nora Bennett stepped through a door she didn't know existed, into a past she couldn't remember, toward a truth that would change everything. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean. While inside the cafe, 3 lives converged in a moment that felt both like an ending and a beginning. Zachary stood, his hand finding Lily's, his eyes never leaving Nora's face. And somewhere in the back of Nora's mind, buried beneath 3 years of carefully constructed amnesia, a memory stirred, the ghost of a feeling, the echo of a name, the shadow of a love she had forgotten, but never truly lost. The door to the cafe opened, and the sound of the rain grew louder, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Zachary's SUV cut through the rain-slicked streets of Portland, heading east toward the hills where the city's wealthy kept their estates hidden behind iron gates and old-growth trees. Nora sat in the back seat with Lily pressed against her side, the little girl's hand clutching hers with a grip that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. Zachary drove in silence, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds to look at the woman who might be his wife. Nora watched the city pass by through rain-streaked windows, the Pearl District giving way to the West Hills, the streets growing quieter, the houses larger and set farther back from the road. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She should have called someone, should have told someone where she was going. But who would she call? She had no one, and something about the weight of Lily's hand in hers kept her from pulling away, kept her from demanding to be let out of the car. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. "Home," Zachary said. Then, after a pause, "Our home. The house where we lived. Where you lived." Nora swallowed hard. I know." His voice was rough, strained. "I know you don't remember, but maybe if you see it, if you see the things that were yours, it might help." They turned onto a private road, and massive gates swung open automatically. The driveway wound through towering Douglas firs and manicured gardens, finally opening onto a sprawling estate that looked like something out of a magazine. The house was modern, all glass and stone and clean lines, with floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the gray sky. It was beautiful, it was intimidating, and it felt absolutely nothing like home. Inside, the house was warm and quiet, decorated with expensive furniture and original artwork that Nora suspected cost more than she made in a year. Lily finally released her hand and ran ahead, her pink raincoat leaving a trail of water droplets on the polished hardwood floor. "Mrs. Chen," the little girl called out. An older woman appeared from what looked like the kitchen, her face breaking into a warm smile at the sight of Lily. But when her eyes landed on Nora, she froze, one hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," the woman whispered in accented English. "Miss Elena?" Nora shook her head quickly. "No, She doesn't remember," Zachary said, his voice cutting through the confusion. "Mrs. Chen, can you take Lily upstairs? Give us some time." The older woman nodded slowly, still staring at Nora like she'd seen a ghost. She took Lily's hand, though the little girl protested, wanting to stay with Mommy. Eventually, they disappeared up a curved staircase, and Nora was left alone with Zachary in the vast, silent house. He moved to a cabinet in the living room and pulled out a bottle of whiskey, pouring 2 glasses without asking if she wanted one. He handed her a glass, and she took it with trembling fingers, grateful for something to hold on to. 3 years ago, Zachary began, his voice low and controlled. "You and I were driving back from the coast. It was late. Highway 26 near the tunnel. There was another car. They forced us off the road. It was an ambush, a rival organization trying to send a message." He paused, taking a long drink from his glass. Nora watched him, seeing the pain etched into the lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The car flipped, went down an embankment. I was thrown clear, broke 3 ribs in my left arm. "But you—" His voice cracked, and he looked away. "You were still in the car when it caught fire. I tried to get to you. I tried. But the flames— there was an explosion. By the time emergency services arrived, there was nothing left. No body. They said the fire was too intense. They said—" He stopped, his hand tightening around the glass. "They said you were gone." Nora felt the room spinning. She sat down heavily on the leather couch, the whiskey sloshing in her glass. "But I'm not dead. No." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "You're not. Which means someone pulled you out of that car. Someone took you. And either they caused your amnesia, or they used it to their advantage. Why?" The question came out as barely a whisper. "Why would someone do that?" Zachary's expression darkened. "Because of who I am. Because of what I control. You were leverage, Elena. You were the one thing that could be used against me. But if they thought you had value, why didn't they use you? Why didn't they make demands? Nora shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't know. I don't know any of this. I woke up in a hospital 3 years ago with no memory and no identification. The police couldn't find any missing person reports that matched me. I had nothing. No past, no family, no... She stopped, looking around the opulent room. No life like this. Come with me. Zachary set down his glass and headed toward the staircase. After a moment's hesitation, Nora followed. He led her down a hallway on the second floor, past closed doors and family photographs that she didn't let herself look at too closely. He stopped at a door at the end of the hall and pushed it open. The room beyond was clearly a bedroom. Their bedroom, she realized with a jolt. It was decorated in soft grays and whites, with a massive bed and more floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the forested property. But Zachary didn't stop there. He crossed to a walk-in closet and opened it, revealing rows of women's clothing, shoes, accessories. I couldn't get rid of your things, he said quietly. Lily used to come in here and sleep in your clothes. She was only one when we thought you died. She doesn't really remember you, not consciously, but something in her recognized you today. Nora stepped into the closet, running her fingers along the fabrics. Designer labels, expensive tastes. Nothing like the thrift store finds that filled her own small closet. She pulled out a dress, deep blue silk, elegant and sophisticated, and held it up. It would fit her. Of course it would fit her. There's more. Zachary opened a drawer and pulled out a jewelry box. Inside were pieces that made Nora's breath catch. A diamond necklace, pearl earrings, a wedding ring set with a band of emeralds. He picked up the wedding ring and held it out to her. This was yours. I had it made for you. The emeralds match your eyes. Nora took the ring with shaking hands. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. She slipped it onto her left ring finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. Because it had been made for her. She pulled it off quickly, thrusting it back at him. This doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove I'm her. It just proves that someone who looked like me lived here. Look at this. Zachary pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos. He held it out to her, and Nora found herself staring at a picture of a woman who could have been her twin. Same face, same eyes, same smile. The woman was laughing, holding a baby. Lily, she realized, and standing next to Zachary, who was looking at her with an expression of such unguarded love that it made Nora's chest ache. He swiped to the next photo. The woman, Elena, in a hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a newborn. Another photo. Elena and Zachary on what looked like their wedding day, her in a white dress, him in a tuxedo, both of them young and impossibly happy. That's not me, Nora whispered, but the words felt hollow, because it was her face, her eyes, her smile. There's one more thing. Zachary put the phone away and gently pushed aside the hair on the left side of Nora's head, revealing the scar along her temple. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as they traced the raised line. You got this scar when you were 7. You fell off your bike trying to keep up with your older brother. You needed 12 stitches. Nora jerked back, her hand flying to the scar. How do you... Because you told me. Because I know everything about you, Elena. I know you hate cilantro and love thunderstorms. I know you sing off-key in the shower and that you cry at sad commercials. I know you wanted to be a teacher before. He stopped, his jaw clenching. Before you met me, before you got pulled into my world. The room felt too small suddenly, the walls closing in. Nora backed toward the door, her mind reeling. I need air. I need to think. She stumbled out of the bedroom and down the stairs, Zachary following at a distance. She found herself in the kitchen, a massive space with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. Through the window, she could see the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the gardens beyond were lush and green. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, wringing her hands. Miss Elena, can I get you something? Tea? Water? Stop calling me that. Nora's voice came out sharper than she intended. I'm not Elena. I'm not her. I don't know who she was, but I'm not... A small voice from the doorway cut her off. But you are. You're my mommy. Nora turned to see Lily standing there in dry clothes now, her dark curls pulled back in a ponytail, her gray eyes wide and pleading. The little girl walked slowly toward her, holding something in her hands. I drew this for you, Lily said softly. Before you went away, Daddy said you were in heaven, but I knew you'd come back. I knew it. She held out a piece of paper, wrinkled and worn from being folded and unfolded many times. Nora took it with trembling hands. It was a child's drawing. Stick figures of a man, a woman, and a little girl, all holding hands under a bright yellow sun. At the top, in careful letters that had clearly been traced by an adult's hand, it said, "My family." Something broke inside Nora. She sank down to her knees, eye level with Lily, and felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, but I don't remember. I don't remember you or him or any of this." Lily reached out and gently wiped the tears from Nora's cheeks. "It's okay. Daddy says sometimes people forget things when they're hurt, but love doesn't forget. That's what he says." Nora looked up at Zachary, who was standing in the doorway with an expression of such raw emotion that it took her breath away. And in that moment, she made a decision. She didn't know if she was Elena. She didn't know if this was her life, her family, her past, but she knew that she couldn't walk away. Not from this little girl who looked at her with such hope. Not from this man who had loved someone enough to keep her closet untouched for 3 years. Not from the possibility that somewhere inside her, buried beneath the amnesia and the fear, there might be a truth worth finding. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll stay. For a little while. Until we figure this out." Lily's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. She threw her arms around Nora's neck, and Nora held her, feeling the weight of a child in her arms, and wondering if some part of her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. Zachary nodded once, his expression carefully neutral, but Nora saw the hope flickering in his eyes, and she saw something else too. Determination. He would find out what happened to her. He would find out who took her and why. And when he did, Nora suspected that there would be a reckoning. Outside, the rain had stopped, and a weak sun was trying to break through the clouds. But inside the house, the storm was just beginning. The first week passed in a strange, suspended reality. Nora, she couldn't bring herself to think of herself as Elena yet, stayed in one of the guest rooms, a space that felt safer than the master bedroom with its 2 familiar clothes and 2 intimate memories. Lily was her constant shadow, following her from room to room, chattering about school and friends and her stuffed animals, occasionally stopping to ask, "Do you remember this?" Or, "Did you used to like this too?" Each question was a small knife to Nora's heart. She wanted to remember. God, she wanted to remember. But her mind remained stubbornly blank, offering only those occasional flashes, a scent that triggered something, a sound that felt familiar, a gesture that her body seemed to know before her brain caught up. Zachary kept his distance, watching her with those intense gray eyes, giving her space but always present, always aware. She learned his routines. Early morning workouts in the home gym, phone calls taken behind closed doors, late nights in his office handling business she didn't ask about. Men came and went, associates, she assumed, though no one ever said the word mafia or crime in her presence. They treated her with a careful respect that felt both protective and suffocating. On the 8th day, Zachary knocked on her door after Lily had gone to bed. "Can we talk?" Nora set down the book she'd been pretending to read and nodded. He came in but didn't sit, instead standing by the window with his hands in his pockets, his shoulders tense. "I've been making inquiries," he said without preamble. "About the accident, about what happened after. I need to know what you remember about waking up. Everything, even if it seems insignificant." Nora wrapped her arms around herself. "I woke up in Oregon Health and Science University. The doctors said I'd been found on the side of Highway 26 near Gales Creek. A truck driver saw me walking along the road, disoriented and bleeding. I had a severe head injury, broken ribs, lacerations. No ID, no phone, nothing. They treated me, but I couldn't tell them who I was or where I came from. The police investigated, but there were no missing person reports that matched my description." Zachary's jaw tightened. "Gales Creek. That's 15 miles from where the accident happened. You couldn't have walked that far in your condition. Someone moved you. Or I was held somewhere first," Nora said quietly. "The doctors said my injuries were consistent with a car accident, but some of them had started healing. They estimated I'd been injured 3 or 4 days before I was found." 3 or 4 days. Zachary turned to face her, and she saw the cold fury in his eyes. "Someone had you for 3 or 4 days, and then they just let you go? That doesn't make sense. Unless..." He stopped, his mind clearly racing through possibilities. "Unless what? Unless they thought you were dead, or useless to them." He pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in low, clipped tones. "Marcus, I need you to pull all surveillance footage from Highway 26, Gales Creek area, 3 years ago, the week of the accident. I want to know every vehicle that passed through there, and get me the name of the truck driver who found her." He ended the call and looked at Nora. "We're going to find out what happened to you." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why does it matter so much? Even if I am Elena, even if I was your wife, I don't remember. I'm not her anymore. Why not just let me go back to my life?" Zachary crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped just in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Because someone tried to kill you. Someone took you from me, from Lily. And if they think you're dead, if they think they got away with it, they're wrong. I will find them, and I will make them pay." The words should have frightened her. The cold promise of violence in his voice should have sent her running. But instead, Nora felt something else, a fierce, unexpected sense of safety. This man, this dangerous man, would burn the world down to protect her. And some part of her, some deep buried part, recognized that protection, craved it. "What if I never remember?" she whispered. His expression softened, just slightly. "Then we start over. We build something new. But Lily needs you. And I—" He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "I need to know you're safe." Before Nora could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. "I have to go. There's a situation at the docks. Stay here. Don't leave the property. I'll have security outside your door. I'm a prisoner? You're protected." He headed for the door, then paused. Elena used to hate it too. Being kept safe, being kept out of the dangerous parts of my life. But she understood why it was necessary. "I hope you will too." He left, and Nora heard the sound of car engines starting, voices in the hallway, the house settling into a tense quiet. She moved to the window and looked out at the dark grounds, the security lights casting long shadows across the lawn. Somewhere out there, Zachary was dealing with whatever situation required his personal attention, and she was here, in this beautiful prison, trying to remember a life she wasn't sure she wanted back. She was about to turn away when she saw it, a flicker of movement near the tree line. Just for a second, a figure standing in the shadows, watching the house. Then it was gone, melted back into the darkness. Nora's heart hammered. She pressed closer to the window, searching the shadows but saw nothing. Had she imagined it? Was her mind playing tricks on her? A soft knock on her door made her jump. "Miss Nora?" Mrs. Chen's voice, gentle and concerned. "Are you all right? I thought I heard something." Nora opened the door. "I'm fine. I thought I saw someone outside." Mrs. Chen's expression shifted, becoming more alert. "Where?" "By the trees, but it's probably nothing. A deer maybe, or I'll tell security." The older woman pulled out a phone and made a quick call, speaking in rapid Mandarin. Then she turned back to Nora with a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "They'll check it out. You should rest. It's been a long day." But Nora couldn't rest. After Mrs. Chen left, she paced her room, her mind churning. Someone had been watching the house. She was sure of it, and the way Mrs. Chen had reacted, the immediate call to security. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. She thought about Zachary's words. Someone tried to kill you. Someone took you. What if they hadn't given up? What if they knew she was alive? Knew she was here? Unable to stand the confinement any longer? Nora slipped out of her room and down the hallway. The house was quiet, most of the lights off. She found herself drawn to Zachary's office, the door slightly ajar. She shouldn't go in. She knew she shouldn't, but her hand was already pushing the door open, her feet already carrying her inside. The office was masculine and orderly, with dark wood furniture and leather chairs. One wall was lined with bookshelves, another with filing cabinets. Nora moved to the desk, where a laptop sat closed, and several file folders were stacked neatly. She knew she was invading his privacy. She knew this was wrong, but she needed answers. She opened the top folder and found herself looking at crime scene photos. Her stomach lurched, the burned-out wreckage of a car, twisted metal and charred remains, police reports with words like "presumed deceased" and "no recoverable remains." And then, tucked beneath the official documents, something else. A private investigator's report, dated 6 months after the accident. Nora scanned the pages, her hands shaking. The investigator had found inconsistencies, witness reports that didn't match the official story, evidence that suggested a second vehicle had been involved, one that had left the scene before emergency services arrived. And then, At the bottom of the report, a name circled in red ink, Viktor Kozlov. The name meant nothing to Nora, but clearly it meant something to Zachary. There were more documents, more reports, all pointing to this Viktor Kozlov, a rival organization, a power struggle. A man who had wanted to take over Zachary's territory and had been willing to kill to get it. You shouldn't be in here. Nora spun around to find Zachary standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. She dropped the folder, papers scattering across the desk. I'm sorry, I needed to know. Viktor Kozlov. Zachary moved into the room, his movements controlled but radiating tension. He's the one who ordered the hit, the one who tried to kill us both. I've been hunting him for 3 years, but he's like a ghost. Every time I get close, he disappears. Is he the one who took me? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe one of his men pulled you out of the wreckage, planning to use you as leverage, and then something went wrong. Maybe you escaped. Maybe they thought you died from your injuries and dumped you on that highway. His hands clenched into fists. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Nora looked at the scattered papers, at the evidence of violence and vengeance, and felt a chill run down her spine. What will you do when you find him? Zachary's eyes met hers, and in them she saw something ancient and implacable. I'm going to make him wish he'd never been born. The words should have horrified her. Instead, Nora felt that strange stirring again, that sense of recognition, because somewhere inside her, some part of Elena remembered this man, remembered his capacity for both love and violence, and had accepted it, had maybe even loved him for it. There's something else you should know, Zachary said, his voice softer now. He moved to one of the filing cabinets and pulled out a folder, handing it to her. This is who you were, before me, before all of this. Nora opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were documents, photographs, pieces of a life. A college transcript from Portland State University. Elena Martinez, degree in elementary education. A teaching certificate. Photos of a young woman volunteering at a community center, surrounded by children. Letters of recommendation praising her patience, her kindness, her dedication. You were a teacher, Zachary said quietly. 3rd grade. You loved it. You were good at it. And then you met me at a charity fundraiser, and everything changed. Nora stared at the photos, at this woman who looked like her, but felt like a stranger, a teacher, someone who had wanted to help children, to make a difference. How had that woman ended up married to a crime lord? You gave it up, Zachary continued. When we got married, when Lily was born, it wasn't safe for you to work, not with who I am, not with the enemies I have. You hated it. You hated being kept in this house, being protected and isolated. We fought about it. The night of the accident, we'd been fighting about it. The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with guilt and regret. Nora closed the folder carefully, her mind reeling. What were we fighting about? You wanted to go back to teaching. You said you were suffocating, that you needed something that was yours, not mine. I said it was too dangerous. I said I couldn't protect you if you were out in the world, exposed. You said, his voice cracked. You said maybe you didn't want to be protected anymore. Maybe you wanted to live. Nora felt tears stinging her eyes. And then someone tried to kill me. And then I lost you. Zachary looked away, his jaw tight. For 3 years, I've lived with the guilt, wondering if you'd still be here if I'd just let you go, if I'd just let you be free. But I came back, Nora whispered. Somehow I found my way back. He looked at her then, and the raw emotion in his eyes took her breath away. Or someone brought you back, and we need to find out why. A sound from downstairs made them both freeze. Voices, urgent and alarmed. Zachary moved immediately, pulling a gun from a desk drawer with practiced ease. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. What's happening? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He paused at the door, looking back at her. Whatever happens, whatever you hear, stay in this room. Promise me. Nora nodded, her heart racing. Zachary disappeared into the hallway, and she heard his footsteps pounding down the stairs, heard more voices, heard the sound of doors opening and closing. She moved to lock the office door, her hands shaking, and then she heard it, a scream, high-pitched and terrified. Lily. Nora didn't think. She ran from the office, down the hallway toward Lily's room. The door was open, and inside she could see Mrs. Chen holding the little girl, both of them staring at the window. The glass was shattered, and on the floor, surrounded by broken shards, was a brick wrapped in paper. Zachary was already there, his gun drawn, security guards flanking him. He picked up the brick carefully, unwrapping the paper. His face went white, then red with fury. "What is it?" Nora asked from the doorway. He looked up at her, and in his eyes she saw fear. Real, genuine fear. "It's a message. From Victor." He held out the paper so she could see the words scrawled in red ink. "I know she's alive, and I'm coming for what's mine." The room went silent. Lily was crying. Mrs. Chen was murmuring soothing words in Mandarin, and the security guards were talking into radios, locking down the property. But all Nora could focus on was that message, those words that confirmed her worst fear. Someone knew she was here. Someone was watching. And whatever had happened 3 years ago, whatever had torn her life apart and stolen her memories, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The house became a fortress overnight. Zachary doubled the security, installed new cameras, had every window fitted with reinforced glass. Men with guns patrolled the grounds 24 hours a day. Lily wasn't allowed to go to school. A private tutor came to the house instead. And Nora found herself more trapped than ever, watching the world through bulletproof windows, while Zachary hunted for the man who had threatened them. 2 weeks passed in tense silence. Zachary was gone more than he was home, returning late at night with blood on his knuckles and a darkness in his eyes that made Nora afraid to ask questions. She spent her days with Lily, reading to her, playing games, trying to be the mother this little girl so desperately needed. And slowly, against all logic, she began to feel like one. It was the small things that got to her. The way Lily curled into her side during story time. The way the little girl's face lit up when Nora walked into a room. The way she said, "I love you, Mommy," before bed, even though Nora had told her a dozen times that she wasn't sure she was really her mother. "You are," Lily would insist, with the absolute certainty of a 4-year-old. "I know you are." And Nora wanted to believe her. God, she wanted to believe her. On the 15th day, Zachary came home early, his face grim. He found Nora in the living room, where she'd been trying to read while Lily napped upstairs. "We need to talk." He poured himself a whiskey, downed it in one gulp, then poured another. "I found something. About the night you disappeared." Nora set down her book, her heart racing. "What?" "There was a witness. A homeless man who was camping in the woods near the accident site. He saw the whole thing." Zachary sat down heavily, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "He saw the car go off the road, saw it catch fire, and he saw someone pull you out." "Who?" He couldn't see clearly. It was dark, and he was far away, but he said it was a man, tall, wearing dark clothes. "The man pulled you from the wreckage and carried you to another car, a black sedan. Then they drove away." Nora's mind reeled. "So someone did take me. But why? And why let me go? That's what I've been trying to figure out." Zachary leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. "I've been going through Victor's organization, questioning everyone I can find. And I finally got someone to talk, one of his lieutenants, a man named Alexei." "What did he say?" Zachary's expression darkened. "He said Victor did order the hit. He wanted me dead, wanted to take over my territory. But the plan was never to kill you. It was to take you, to use you as leverage to force me out." Nora felt cold all over. "But they didn't use me. They let me go, because something went wrong." Zachary looked at her, and she saw the pain in his eyes. "Alexei said you fought back. When they pulled you from the car, when you realized what was happening, you fought. You managed to get away from them, ran into the woods. They chased you, but you disappeared. They searched for days, but they couldn't find you. Eventually, they assumed you died from your injuries." The words triggered something in Nora's mind, a flash of memory, quick and visceral, running through darkness, branches tearing at her skin, her lungs burning, terror clawing at her throat. A voice behind her, shouting, the sound of gunfire. And then nothing. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember running. I remember being so scared. And then, nothing. It's all blank after that." Zachary reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and solid. "You survived. You got away from them. You're stronger than you know, Elena." The name felt less foreign now, less like someone else's identity, and more like a piece of herself she was slowly reclaiming. "But if Victor thinks I'm dead, why send that message? Why threaten us now?" "Because someone told him you're alive." Zachary's jaw clenched. "Someone in my organization. Someone who saw you, who recognized you, and who sold that information to Victor. You have a traitor." "Yes." The word was flat, cold. "And I'm going to find them. Before Nora could respond, Zachary's phone rang. He answered it, his expression shifting from grim to furious in seconds. When? How many? I'm on my way. He ended the call and stood, already moving toward the door. What's wrong? Victor just hit one of my warehouses, burned it to the ground. 3 of my men are dead. He paused, looking back at her. This is escalating. He's not just threatening anymore. He's declaring war. Then end it. The words came out before Nora could stop them, fierce and certain. Find him. Stop him. Before he hurts anyone else. Zachary stared at her, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or hope. That's what Elena would have said. She never backed down from a fight, even when she should have. Maybe I'm more like her than I thought. He crossed back to her, cupping her face in his hands. The gesture was intimate, familiar, and Nora found herself leaning into it, craving the contact. I'm going to keep you safe, both of you. I promise. I know. And she did. She trusted this man, this dangerous man, in a way that defied logic, because some part of her, some deep buried part, had always trusted him. He kissed her forehead, a gentle, reverent gesture, then left. Nora heard the sound of cars starting, men shouting orders, the house settling into an armed quiet. She moved to the window and watched the security guards patrolling the grounds, their weapons visible, their movements alert. She was about to turn away when she saw it again, that flicker of movement near the tree line. But this time, it didn't disappear. This time, the figure stepped into the light, and Nora saw him clearly. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing dark clothes. He was too far away for her to see his face, but she could feel his eyes on her, could feel the weight of his stare. And then he raised one hand, pointing at her, a gesture that felt like both a promise and a threat. Nora's blood ran cold. She grabbed her phone and called Zachary, her hands shaking. There's someone here, outside, by the trees. Get away from the window now, I'm sending men. But before he could finish, the lights went out. The entire house plunged into darkness, and Nora heard the sound of glass breaking downstairs, heard shouts and gunfire, heard Lily screaming from upstairs. Lily! Nora dropped the phone and ran, her heart pounding, her only thought to get to the little girl. She took the stairs 2 at a time, racing down the hallway toward Lily's room. The door was open, and inside she could see Mrs. Chen trying to calm the terrified child. It's okay, Nora gasped, pulling Lily into her arms. I've got you. You're safe. But they weren't safe. Downstairs, she could hear the sounds of fighting, gunshots, breaking furniture, men shouting. The security guards were engaged with intruders, and Nora realized with growing horror that they were under attack. We need to hide, Mrs. Chen said urgently. There's a panic room, in the master bedroom. Come. They ran down the hallway, Lily clinging to Nora, her small body trembling. Mrs. Chen led them into the master bedroom and to the walk-in closet, pushing aside a rack of clothes to reveal a hidden door. She pressed her palm to a scanner, and the door clicked open, revealing a small, reinforced room with supplies and a phone. Get in. Lock it behind me. Don't open it for anyone except Mr. Kane. What about you? Nora asked, but Mrs. Chen was already pushing them inside. I'll be fine. I need to help the guards. Go. The door closed, and Nora heard the lock engage. She and Lily were alone in the small space, the sounds of fighting muffled but still audible. Lily was crying, and Nora held her close, murmuring soothing words she didn't feel. It's okay, baby. Daddy will come. He'll keep us safe. But minutes passed, and the sounds of fighting continued. Nora picked up the phone in the panic room and dialed Zachary's number with shaking fingers. Elena? His voice was tight with fear. Are you safe? We're in the panic room. Zachary, what's happening? Victor's men. They cut the power, breached the perimeter. I'm 10 minutes away. Just stay where you are. Don't open that door for anyone. Hurry, please. I'm coming. I promise. The line went dead. Nora stared at the phone, her heart sinking. She looked down at Lily, who was pressed against her side, her face buried in Nora's sweater. And in that moment, Nora made a decision. She didn't know if she was Elena. She didn't know if she would ever remember her past. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would die before she let anyone hurt this child. The sounds outside the panic room changed. The gunfire stopped. The shouting faded. An eerie silence fell over the house, broken only by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps, moving toward the master bedroom. Nora held her breath, pulling Lily closer. The footsteps stopped outside the closet. She heard the sound of clothes being pushed aside, heard someone testing the panic room door. "I know you're in there, Elena." The voice was unfamiliar, accented, cold. "You can't hide forever. Victor wants to see you. He has questions about what you remember, about what you might have told your husband." Nora didn't respond, didn't move. Lily whimpered, and Nora pressed her hand gently over the little girl's mouth, silencing her. "He's not going to stop," the voice continued. "He's going to keep coming until he gets what he wants. You, dead or alive. Your daughter, leverage or collateral damage. Your husband, broken or buried. Is that what you want?" Still, Nora said nothing. Her mind was racing, calculating. The panic room was secure, but it wasn't impenetrable. If they had enough time, enough tools, they could get in. And Zachary was still 10 minutes away, maybe more depending on traffic, on whatever obstacles Victor's men had put in his path. Think about it, Elena. Think about what's best for your family. Come out now, and maybe Victor will be merciful. Maybe he'll let the girl live. The words sent a surge of rage through Nora so fierce it took her breath away. She looked down at Lily, at this innocent child who had already lost her mother once, and felt something shift inside her. A wall crumbling, a door opening, and behind it, a flood of memories. She remembered. She remembered falling in love with Zachary at that charity fundraiser, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the room. She remembered their wedding, small and private, just the two of them and a judge. She remembered finding out she was pregnant, the joy and terror of bringing Lily into this dangerous world. She remembered the fights, the fear, the suffocating protection, and she remembered the accident, the car forcing them off the road, the impact, the fire, Zachary's desperate attempts to reach her. She remembered being pulled from the wreckage by rough hands, being dragged to a car while she fought and screamed. She remembered escaping, running through the dark woods, the sound of bullets whipping past her head. She remembered falling, hitting her head on a rock, the world going black, and she remembered waking up in a hospital with no memory, no identity, no past. But now, in this moment of crisis, it all came flooding back. Every memory, every emotion, every piece of herself that she had lost. She was Elena Kane. She was Zachary's wife. She was Lily's mother, and she was done hiding. "Lily," she whispered, pulling back to look at the little girl. "I need you to be very brave for me, okay? I need you to stay here, stay quiet no matter what you hear. Can you do that?" Lily's eyes were wide with fear, but she nodded. "Are you leaving?" "Just for a minute. I'm going to keep you safe, I promise." Elena kissed her daughter's forehead, then moved to the panel beside the door. There was an emergency release, a way to open the door from the inside. She'd insisted on it when Zachary had the panic room installed, paranoid about being trapped. Now she was grateful for that paranoia. She pressed her palm to the scanner, and the door clicked open. The man in the hallway spun around, his gun coming up, but Elena was faster. She grabbed the heavy jewelry box from the shelf beside the door and threw it with all her strength. It hit him in the face, and he stumbled back, blood streaming from his nose. Elena didn't hesitate. She launched herself at him. Years of self-defense training that Zachary had insisted on coming back to her in a rush. She went for his gun, twisting his wrist, using his momentum against him. They struggled, crashing into the wall, and then the gun went off. For a moment, Elena thought she'd been shot, but then the man's grip loosened, and he slumped to the floor, a red stain spreading across his chest. She'd managed to turn the gun on him, and the bullet had found its mark. Elena stood there, shaking, the gun now in her hands, staring at the body at her feet. She'd just killed a man. She should feel horror, should feel guilt, but all she felt was a fierce primal satisfaction. He had threatened her daughter, and she had stopped him. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, and Elena raised the gun, ready to fire, but then she heard a voice she recognized. "Elena. Zachary." She lowered the gun as he burst into the room, his own weapon drawn, his face wild with fear and fury. Behind him were his men, securing the house, checking for more intruders. He saw the body on the floor, saw the gun in Elena's hands, and his expression shifted from fear to something else. Pride, maybe, or recognition. He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You're okay. You're okay." He was repeating it like a mantra, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. "Where's Lily?" In the panic room. She's safe. Elena pulled back, looking up at him. Zachary, I remember everything. His eyes widened, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. Everything. The accident, being taken, escaping, and before that, us, our life, our love. I remember it all. Zachary cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. Elena, my Elena, I thought I'd lost you forever. I'm here. I'm back, and I'm not going anywhere. She looked past him to the body on the floor, to the chaos of the house around them. But we need to end this. Victor needs to pay for what he's done. Zachary's expression hardened, becoming the cold, dangerous mask she remembered so well. He will. I promise you. He will. From the panic room, Lily's small voice called out, Mommy? Daddy? Elena pulled away from Zachary and went to her daughter, scooping her up and holding her close. I'm here, baby. Mommy's here, and I'm never leaving you again. Lily looked up at her with those gray eyes, so like her father's, and smiled through her tears. You remember me now? I remember everything. And I love you so much. As Elena held her daughter, with Zachary's arm around them both, she felt the pieces of her life finally clicking back into place. She was home. She was whole. And she was ready to fight for her family, no matter what it cost. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The house was a war zone, but they had survived. They had won this battle. But the war with Viktor Kozlov was far from over. And Elena knew, with a certainty that came from the very core of her being, that it would end only one way, with blood. The next 48 hours were a blur of police interviews, damage assessment, and strategic planning. Elena gave her statement to the detectives who arrived at the scene, carefully edited to remove any mention of Zachary's criminal activities. Self-defense, she said. An intruder who had broken into their home. The gun was registered, the shooting justified. The detectives looked skeptical, but didn't push. They knew who Zachary Kane was, knew better than to dig too deep. Once the police left, the real work began. Zachary called a meeting of his top lieutenants, and for the first time since her memories returned, Elena sat in on it. She belonged here now, not as a protected wife kept in the dark, but as a partner who had proven she could handle herself. The men gathered in Zachary's office. Marcus, his second in command, a scarred veteran with cold eyes. James, his financial advisor, who looked more like a college professor than a criminal, and 3 others whose names Elena was still relearning. They all nodded respectfully to her as she entered, a sign of acceptance that would have been unthinkable before. Victor's getting desperate, Marcus said, spreading a map of Portland across the desk. The warehouse attack, the assault on your home. These aren't strategic moves. These are the actions of a man who's running out of options. Good, Zachary said flatly. Desperate men make mistakes, and when he makes his next one, we'll be ready. We've tracked his movements, James added, pushing his glasses up his nose. He's been staying at a property in Gresham, an old industrial building that he's converted into a fortress. Heavy security, multiple escape routes. But there's a weakness. He pointed to a spot on the map. The building backs onto the Columbia River. There's a dock, boats for a quick getaway if needed. But that also means there's an approach he might not expect. From the water. Elena studied the map, her mind working through the logistics. How many men does he have? Best estimate, 20, maybe 25. All armed, all loyal. Marcus looked at Zachary. We could take them, but it would be bloody. And loud. The kind of thing that brings federal attention we don't need. Then we don't go in loud, Elena said quietly. All eyes turned to her. We go in smart. We use Victor's desperation against him. Zachary raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? He wants me. He sent that message. He attacked our home. It's all about me. About what I might remember. What I might have told you. So we give him what he wants. She met Zachary's eyes, seeing the immediate refusal forming there. We let him think he's won. We let him think he's captured me. Absolutely not. Zachary's voice was hard as steel. I'm not using you as bait. It's not bait if I'm in control. Elena leaned forward, her hands flat on the desk. Think about it. Victor wants answers. He wants to know what I remember about the night of the accident, about his organization, about anything that could be used against him. If we let him think he has me, if we let him bring me to his fortress, I can get inside. I can find his weaknesses. And when the time is right, you come in and finish this. The room was silent. Marcus looked intrigued. James looked horrified. and Zachary looked like he wanted to lock Elena in the panic room and never let her out. "It's too dangerous," he said finally. "If something goes wrong, if they hurt you, they won't, because I'll have backup, because you'll be tracking me every second, and because I'm not the helpless victim they think I am." Elena reached across the desk and took his hand. "I can do this, Zachary. I need to do this. For Lily. For us. To end this once and for all." Zachary stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes, his need to protect her versus his respect for her strength, his fear versus his trust. Finally, he nodded. "Just once. We do this my way. You wear a tracker, a wire, and a panic button. At the first sign of trouble, we come in, and you don't play hero. You get the information we need, and you get out. Understood?" "Understood." They spent the next day preparing. Elena was fitted with a nearly invisible tracker, sewn into the waistband of her jeans, and a wire so small it looked like a piece of jewelry. She practiced her story. She'd left the house to get some air, to process everything that had happened. She'd been grabbed off the street by Victor's men. She was scared, confused, willing to cooperate if it meant keeping her family safe. Lily didn't know about the plan. Elena couldn't bear to tell her daughter that she was walking into danger, couldn't stand to see the fear in those gray eyes. Instead, she held Lily close that night, reading her favorite stories, singing the lullabies that she now remembered singing when Lily was a baby. "Mommy?" Lily's sleepy voice broke through the quiet. "Are you going away again?" Elena's heart clenched. "No, baby. I'm never leaving you. I promise. But what if the bad men come back?" "They won't. Daddy and I are going to make sure of it." Elena kissed her daughter's forehead. "You're safe. You'll always be safe." The next morning, Elena left the house alone, walking down the long driveway toward the gates. She knew Zachary was watching from the security cameras, knew his men were positioned nearby, ready to intervene if needed. But she also knew that for this to work, it had to look real. She made it 2 blocks before the van pulled up beside her. The door slid open, and rough hands grabbed her, pulling her inside before she could scream. A hood was thrown over her head, and she felt the prick of a needle in her arm. The world went fuzzy, then dark. When Elena woke, she was in a chair in a dimly lit room, her hands zip-tied behind her back. The hood had been removed, and she could see concrete walls, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, and a door with a heavy lock. The industrial building in Gresham, she assumed. The door opened, and a man walked in. He was in his 50s, with silver hair and a face that might have been handsome once, but was now marked by cruelty and age. Victor Kozlov. Elena recognized him from the photos Zachary had shown her. Elena Kane. His accent was thick, Russian. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." Again. Elena kept her expression neutral, scared but not terrified. "What do you want?" "Answers." Victor pulled up a chair and sat down across from her, his movements casual, almost friendly. 3 years ago, you were in a car with your husband. My men forced you off the road. You survived. I want to know how. I don't remember much. I had amnesia. I only just got my memories back. How convenient. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. And now that you remember, what did you tell your husband about that night? About the men who took you? About what you saw? Elena shook her head. I didn't see anything. It was dark. The car was on fire. Someone pulled me out, but I don't know who. I ran. I got away. That's all I remember. You're lying. Victor stood abruptly, and Elena flinched, the movement genuine. You know more than you're saying, and you're going to tell me, one way or another. He nodded to someone behind Elena, and she heard footsteps. A moment later, pain exploded across her back as something, a baton, maybe, or a whip, struck her. She cried out, unable to stop herself, and heard Victor's satisfied chuckle. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Elena. Your choice. In her ear, so faint she almost missed it, she heard Zachary's voice through the wire. Hold on. We're coming. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. She could last 5 minutes. She had to. Okay, she gasped, letting her head drop forward. Okay, I'll tell you. Just stop. Victor raised a hand, and the beating stopped. I'm listening. Elena took a shaky breath, buying time. There was a man, tall, with a scar on his left cheek. He pulled me from the car. He said, Victor Kozlov sends his regards. He said you wanted me alive, wanted to use me against Zachary. Victor leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. What else? He took me to a house. I don't know where. I was there for days. They asked me questions about Zachary's operations, his contacts, his weaknesses. I didn't tell them anything. I swear I didn't. And then I escaped. I hit one of the guards, took his keys, ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran until I couldn't run anymore. That's when the truck driver found me. Victor studied her face, looking for lies. Elena kept her expression open, frightened, sincere. After a long moment, he nodded. The man with the scar. That was Alexei. He was supposed to bring you to me, but he got greedy, thought he could ransom you himself, make a profit. I had him killed for his disobedience. I'm sorry, Elena whispered, though she felt no sympathy for the man who had helped orchestrate her kidnapping. You should be sorry for yourself. Victor stood, moving toward the door. Because now that I know you don't have any useful information, you've outlived your usefulness. I'm going to kill you, Elena. And then I'm going to kill your daughter. And I'm going to make your husband watch. The words sent ice through Elena's veins. But before she could respond, before Victor could reach the door, it exploded inward. Zachary came through first, his gun raised, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him were Marcus and a dozen other men, all armed, all ready for war. Get away from my wife, Zachary said, his voice deadly calm. Victor spun around, reaching for his own weapon, but he was too slow. Zachary fired once, and Victor dropped to his knees, blood blooming across his shoulder. His gun clattered to the floor. The room erupted into chaos. Victor's men came running, and gunfire echoed through the building. But Zachary's men were ready, and they had the element of surprise. Elena struggled against her zip ties, trying to free herself, and then Marcus was there, cutting her loose. You okay? He asked, and Elena nodded, rubbing her wrists. I'm fine. Go. Help them. Marcus ran back into the fray, and Elena looked around for a weapon. She found a gun on the floor, dropped by one of Victor's men, and picked it up. It felt heavy and solid in her hands, familiar in a way that should have scared her but didn't. Zachary was advancing on Victor, who was trying to crawl toward the door, leaving a trail of blood behind him. You threatened my family, Zachary said, his voice empty of emotion. You tried to kill my wife. You terrorized my daughter. And now you're going to pay. Wait. Victor's voice was weak, desperate. We can make a deal. I have money, resources, connections. I can give you everything. I don't want everything. Zachary raised his gun, pointing it at Victor's head. I just want you dead. Zachary. Elena's voice cut through the chaos. He looked at her, and she saw the question in his eyes. This was her choice, her revenge to claim or to deny. She walked over to them, the gun still in her hand, and looked down at Victor. This man had destroyed her life, had stolen 3 years from her, had threatened her child. She should want him dead. She should pull the trigger herself. But as she stood there, looking at this pathetic, bleeding man, she realized something. He'd already lost. His organization was in shambles. His men were dead or captured, and he was going to spend the rest of his life in prison or a grave. Killing him wouldn't change what had happened. It wouldn't give her back the time she'd lost. Let him live, she said quietly. Let him rot in prison, knowing that he failed. That's a better punishment than a quick death. Zachary looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. He lowered his gun and turned to Marcus. Call the police. Anonymous tip. Tell them there's a wanted fugitive here, armed and dangerous. Marcus grinned, with pleasure. As Victor was dragged away by Zachary's men, to be left for the authorities, Elena felt the weight of the past 3 years finally lifting from her shoulders. It was over. The nightmare was over. Zachary pulled her into his arms, holding her like he'd never let go. You were incredible, he murmured into her hair. Brave and brilliant and absolutely terrifying. Elena laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. I learned from the best. They left the building as sirens wailed in the distance, Zachary's men melting away into the city, leaving no trace of their involvement. By the time the police arrived, all they would find was Viktor Kozlov and the evidence of his crimes. And the Kane family would be safe, finally and completely. 3 months later, Elena stood in the kitchen of their home, watching the rain fall outside the windows. It was a Thursday afternoon, and she had a cup of chamomile tea in her hands, the steam curling up into the gray light. But this time, she wasn't alone. Lily sat at the kitchen table, working on a drawing, her tongue poking out in concentration. And from upstairs, Elena could hear the sound of Zachary on a phone call. his voice low and businesslike. The house had been repaired, the broken windows replaced, the bullet holes patched and painted over. On the surface, it looked like nothing had ever happened, but Elena knew better. They all carried the scars of those weeks, visible and invisible, physical and emotional, but they had survived, and they were stronger for it. "Mommy, look." Lily held up her drawing, a family portrait, just like the one she'd shown Elena that first day in the cafe. But this time, the figures were more detailed, more real. A man, a woman, and a little girl, all holding hands under a bright sun. "It's beautiful, baby." Elena sat down beside her daughter and pulled her into a hug. "You're such a good artist." "It's us," Lily said proudly. "Our family. Together." "Together," Elena echoed, feeling the word settle into her bones like a promise. Zachary came downstairs, ending his call as he entered the kitchen. He looked tired but content, the darkness that had haunted his eyes for so long finally fading. He poured himself a coffee and sat down at the table with them, his hand finding Elena's automatically. "How's the new security system?" Elena asked, and Zachary smiled. "Overkill, according to Marcus, but I'm not taking any chances." "Good." Elena squeezed his hand. "I like overkill." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just being together, being a family. Then Lily looked up at her father with those serious gray eyes. "Daddy, can I go back to school now? I miss my friends." Zachary and Elena exchanged a glance. They'd been keeping Lily home, paranoid about her safety, but they both knew they couldn't keep her locked away forever. She needed normalcy, needed to be a kid. "Yes," Elena said, before Zachary could object. "You can go back next week, but Daddy's going to make sure you have the best security in the whole school." Lily beamed. "Can I have a bodyguard? Like in the movies?" "Something like that," Zachary said dryly, and Elena laughed. After Lily went upstairs to play, Elena and Zachary remained at the table, their hands still linked. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. "Being back here? Being in this life?" Elena considered the question. Was she happy? 3 months ago, she would have said no. 3 months ago, she was Nora Bennett, living a small, safe life with no complications and no danger. But now, sitting here with her husband and her daughter, remembering who she was and what she'd fought for, she realized something. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm happy. This is where I belong. Even though it's dangerous, even though there will always be threats, always be people who want to hurt us, even though." Elena turned to face him fully. "I spent 3 years not knowing who I was, feeling like something was missing. And now I know what it was. It was you. It was Lily. It was this life, messy and complicated and dangerous as it is. I'd rather have this, have you, than be safe and alone." Zachary pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "I love you, Elena Kane. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you were gone. I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the rain falling steadily outside, and Elena felt, for the first time in 3 years, completely whole, completely home. Later that evening, after Lily was asleep, Elena found herself in Zachary's office. He was working on something at his desk, and she perched on the edge, watching him. "I've been thinking," she said, and he looked up with a raised eyebrow. "That's always dangerous." She smiled. "I want to go back to teaching. Not full-time, not right away, but maybe volunteering at a community center, working with kids who need help. I know it's risky. I know it puts me out in the world, but it's who you are," Zachary finished. "And I'm not going to take that away from you again. We'll make it work. We'll keep you safe, but you should do what makes you happy." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. For understanding. For not trying to lock me away. I learned my lesson." He stood and pulled her into his arms. "Keeping you safe means nothing if you're not living. And I want you to live, Elena. Fully and completely." She kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. And when they finally pulled apart, she saw her future stretching out before her, complicated and uncertain, but filled with love and purpose, and the family she had fought so hard to reclaim. The next Thursday, Elena found herself back at Bella's cafe, sitting at her usual corner table with a cup of chamomile tea, but this time she wasn't alone. Lily sat beside her, coloring in a book, and Zachary was across from her, reading the newspaper. A security guard sat discreetly at a nearby table, and Elena knew there were more outside, watching the streets. It should have felt oppressive this constant protection. But instead, it felt like love, like a family that would do anything to keep each other safe. The bell above the door chimed, and Elena looked up out of habit. A young woman entered, looking lost and uncertain, and Elena felt a pang of recognition. She remembered being that woman, alone, confused, searching for something she couldn't name. On impulse, Elena stood and walked over to her. "Are you okay? You look like you could use a friend." The woman looked surprised, then grateful. "I'm new to Portland. I don't really know anyone yet." "Well, now you know me." Elena smiled and gestured to her table. "Come sit with us. I'll buy you a coffee." As the woman joined them, as Lily chattered happily about her drawings, and Zachary watched with amused tolerance, Elena felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was her life now. Not perfect, not safe, but real and full and worth fighting for. She looked out the window at the rain-washed streets of Portland, at the city that had been her home before she lost herself, and the city where she had found herself again. And she thought about the journey that had brought her here, the pain and the fear, the loss and the rediscovery, the love that had survived even death itself. She was Elena Kane. She was a wife, a mother, a teacher, a survivor. She was strong and brave, and fiercely protective of the people she loved. And she was finally, completely, home. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean, and inside the cafe, a family sat together, whole and unbroken, ready to face whatever came next, together. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories, and leave a comment telling me what you thought about Elena and Zachary's journey. What would you have done in Elena's situation? Let me know in the comments below.